Good evening, everyone. Being 5:15, I'd like to call the Economic Development Committee meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call has been taken.
Yes.
Okay, I'd entertain a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Tim, second by Hans. Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Ayes have it. Okay, I would like to entertain a motion to approve the February 2024 meeting minutes as presented in the packet.
Motion to approve. Second.
Motion by Bill, second by Colton. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, minutes are approved. Moving on to public comment. Any public comment? Last call for public comment. Hearing none. I'd like to move on to the review of the WEDAC State of Downtown report that was included in your packet. I had asked this be included in the last month's packet so that you all would have the ability to take a look at it and then put it on the agenda for this month so that we can take a look at it. And I would like your insights, having gone through the packet, having read through the report, just any of what things in the report jumped out to people is basically how I'd like to open up.
Your downtown tells your story.
Yeah. Anything else? So what I got out of this report were the 3 different category classifications that they looked at in this report. Emerging, growing, and established. That's on page 6 of the report, Chad, if you wanted to look at that. And as I read through the report and I looked at their statistics, I was like, where would New London fall on this? If we were had been included in this, where would we fall? Because they looked at 5 key principles and analyzed over 50 different metrics in this report. And so my question was, where are we at and where do we want to be when you look at the stats included in the report? And when I looked at it the first time, I thought, oh, we're encroaching on that growing. But then when I sat down and I looked at it better, we're emerging. We're solid emerging. And that's a really good place to be as you look through the report. The 5 key areas that they talked about in here were economy, inclusion, housing, vibrancy, and resilience. And when I dug deep into it, and I looked at the aspect of economy, they talked about increasing land value, thus generating more tax revenue. We all know that that's pretty much a necessity to grow any community. And then the question I had was, how do we lay the groundwork for that future vibrancy, for making it all happen? How do we lay the groundwork? And how does this committee come into play there? So that's kind of the discussion that I want to have tonight. When they talked about inclusion, they talked about providing space for young professionals both for work environments and for housing. And they really talked about the rent to income ratios when it comes to inclusion. And I know we've all heard a lot of discussion about the rent rates around New London. When they talked about housing, they talked about increased options. We've had those discussions on this committee and several other committees within the city. And they talked about mixed use buildings, really focusing on mixed use buildings, which I think is an advantage that New London has, especially in the downtown. We have those mixed use buildings already. So I really looked at that. They were encouraging more communities to include the mixed use in their downtowns. And the reason for that was because that provides an active and growing environment for people to come to. And they talked about what cities can do for those active and growing environments. And the chamber, kudos to the chamber for the events. They said that those types of one-stop events, those tourist drawing in events, that's a big draw for a community that is going to be going from emerging to growing. They talked about placemaking efforts. We've had a lot of discussions about placemaking efforts in the last 2 years and where we're heading with that. And I really liked their views on that. And one of the things that I really liked that they said was that emerging downtowns are outpacing growing and established communities when it comes to foot traffic and social media presence. Because it's the emerging communities that are setting up the events to draw people into the downtown. And that social media presence, it's those young businesses that are really looking for a great way to get their message out there, get their business out there, get their advertising out there for low cost. And they were talking about how that social media presence is really key to emerging and growing downtowns. So I really like that. And they said that developing live, work, play neighborhoods where people can live in the downtown, they can work in the downtown, and they can find some activities, play in the downtown, is really a big key component. And the resiliency is continuing to advance vibrant and active mixed use environments, and it adds to the sustainability of a downtown area. And they said that walkable, bikeable downtowns are the attractiveness trend. So those are the things that I got out of it. And so then the question that I have for the committee really is, where do we see ourselves aiding the community, aiding the city in moving forward in economic development, and how can we help? What can this committee do?
They talked about in the article how housing is critical and that most communities are missing the mark. And I think New London, the city of New London, is doing a really great job of making sure that we have multiple TID projects and multiple housing developments happening, more than we've seen in a long time.
Absolutely.
I agree, doing the facade program year after year is helping immensely, also make our downtown look better, more attractive.
Absolutely. So those are some of the things when I put together some notes on the direction and focuses for this committee moving forward. The facade grant program, huge draw. And the fact that we expanded that this year, including, additional revenue, plus also having the second round hit the entirety of the city. That helps. We have our billboard advertising that we've been working on. We have that established. We have a cycle and direction that we're working on for that to keep that relevant. And I think it's interesting how many people are still all of a sudden going, oh, we have a billboard. It's really kind of cool that the residents of New London are going, how long has that been there? So that's really a cool thing. And then placemaking, we've been in that visioning phase. And we worked with some other entities and really have had some amazing opportunities revealed to us. So I think that's where we are with the development and how it ties into this report. Where are we going? Where does everybody else think we should be going before I put in my 2 cents?
Hey, Chad, are you able to give us any ideas? So, on page 13 of the document, it talks about the amount of residential units that are available in the downtown and what distinguishes an emerging versus a growing downtown.
Mhm.
So the emerging having 299 units, a growing downtown having 460 units. Do we have any idea where we would fall in that number?
So when I read through this, I was thinking the same thing, because each one of these categories were comparing different aspects, you know, whether it's the residential use units, how many professionals have, you know, education type things, the rental rates. And in the back of my head, I was thinking, is there an easy way just for me to Google something to get some of this data? I didn't have a lot of time today to do that, but I don't have exactly, you know, what our downtown residential units are. I think it might be something we want to explore a little bit, you know, and then, you know, what is our downtown? How far does our downtown, what is the downtown boundary go? What did they use for a downtown boundary? So that's, I guess we would also have to know what they felt their downtown was, or what they used for downtown criteria, so that we could come up with a good comparison, you know, for what these numbers look like. But I don't have the numbers, you know, right now. It'd be something that we would have to do some research on to see where we're at. But the whole document was just interesting to see, and reading through it to kind of, like Belinda said, where do we kind of just generally line up with some of these things? And at first I was with Belinda, I thought, well, we're growing, you know, we're beyond that emerging sense. But as I read through it more, I was like, we might be in that emergency, maybe getting close to the upper edge of the emerging, you know, category. But yeah, I don't have exact comparisons at my fingertips right now. We'd have to do some research on getting those.
I guess what I would like to see a focus on would be increasing that number of downtown residential units. I think we have commercial space that's underutilized. And if you wanted to see more population density downtown, converting some of that underutilized commercial space to ideally mixed use, right? But residential would be helpful for the tax base. Residential would be helpful for downtown businesses. I think we do have a nice walkable, bikeable downtown. And in order for people to benefit from that, they need to live down here.
Yeah, I think you're right on. I think some of the building blocks that we've been working on our zoning code, you know, that's going to help us, you know, correspond and work towards some of those things. I mean, yes, we want density, we want some more additional housing in the downtown, but we just don't want to take storefronts. We don't want residential storefronts being, or we don't want the commercial storefronts being residential, the first floor front facing type things. So we want to make sure that we're being appropriate, and we try the mixed use scenario, you know, encourage that commercial aspect, but then encourage the second floor. And there's grants out that are out there now that the state is putting out, encouraging second floor downtown residential if it's not already being utilized for that. So there might be some opportunities to take advantage of it with that as well.
Wolf River Plaza seems like a huge opportunity to me. I mean, not the existing buildings, but I mean, to be able to redevelop that area would be huge.
I agree. I think about that too. to have a mixed use, a different building there, but have a mixed use building.
I mean, it's practically empty. And has
Yeah.
been for years.
And we've been talking to the new owner who took over last year. He definitely has, and I wanna, promote what he's talked about with us. That he wants to really fill it up. Hopefully something happens with that, whether it's filling up the existing or, changing the scenario and doing some more mixed use type thing,
Mhm.
a new structure, first floor commercial, upper floor residential, all to be determined.
Mhm.
But yeah.
Any other thoughts, concerns?
Can I say something, Belinda? This is John here.
Absolutely. Hi, John.
I, like Chad said, trying to wrap our fingers around what would be considered, emerging and whatnot. But, I'm very feeling positive about the 98 units that are going to be coming online at SCS Wolf River. That's 98 units just right there alone. And then just on the north side of North Water Street there, Tim, you could probably speak to this, but there's got to be at least 20, 25 rental units from, say, the Dairy Queen down to Anchor Park on that side. And then I don't know how many rental units are on the south side of the river, or south side of North Water Street, but that puts us in that, just coming out of emerging into the next level already there. But we've kind of always considered, especially with the new changes that are going to happen up on Cool Street by the museum. You have residential opportunities up above some of those buildings on South Pearl Street, going to the south, I guess, towards the old library and what is now going to be the new museum. That I would consider downtown. I would actually consider downtown probably all the way to the chamber office. So you got those residential facilities, which literally are like a block or two from downtown. So, it all depends on how you look at it, but I think that is residential stuff already. And I agree with Hans, the Wolf River Plaza is a good opportunity to maybe get some more central located housing downtown. But I think, in looking at this report, I, like you, felt pretty optimistic that we're doing a lot of the right things. Just that's my thought on it anyway.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I do. I feel like we're doing a lot of the right things. And Hans, to answer your question, we're probably, depending on where you draw the boundary lines, with the SA Swiderski, we're probably right at that emerging average there.
You think so?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I know so.
Well, I was just thinking like, say, 98 units plus 100 units, let's say on North Water. If
Yeah.
there's 50 on each side of the street.
Yeah, North Water, then you've
So
got some on
that's-
Pearl Street too. You got those.
Okay.
If you're considering that the downtown, now if you expand it bigger, like John was saying, then we're definitely at that 300 mark. But if you're just looking at West North Water Street, Pearl Street, and that little subsection of downtown, then yeah, we're probably more at that 200, maybe a little over. So,
Can I just also say that right next to the credit union down here on Wolf River Avenue, there's those apartment complexes, which I
yeah,
mean, literally, if your kids were at Dairy Queen, you could holler across the river and say, "Hey, get home." That's downtown to me. So you got those units. You got Oak Lawn Apartments, which literally, if you whistled loud enough, you could whistle your kids back from Dairy Queen from Oak Lawn Apartments. And also, you got to consider the new development that's going to go across the street from Hilker and SCS Wolf River, next to Wolf River Vet Clinic. That's going to be those apartments. I would say we're well on our way of being emerging at, you know, at least what's obligated or what's kind of expected to be built and what's there existing. You know, we can't just forget about those apartments by the credit union on the Wolf River by the corner of Oshkosh and Wolf River Ave. That to me is, if you can walk to downtown, if you can walk to the Dairy Queen in under 5 minutes, you're downtown. That's my opinion, but
Which puts us way above 299. So what you're describing as
Fifth
downtown,
Ward.
I don't want 460 housing units. What we're describing as downtown from here to there to there. That'd be
Right,
way too many people.
right. No, right, exactly. No, yeah, like we were saying, John, it depends on where you draw those boundaries as to how you would put those in, and that's what Chad was saying as well. It,
Is there a way for you to find out? Just out of our curiosity, like what did they use? Cause I mean, you can't consider downtown just Main Street.
No.
Yeah, I figured
it's,
a
yeah.
10-minute walk, you're still downtown. I mean,
Well,
Yeah.
how did we establish the downtown district for the facade grant?
That's
I
what
know
I was
that-
just thinking as
That
well.
was, I mean, that was updated many, many times to kind of grow, but how did we establish that? Why couldn't we look at those boundaries?
I'm not familiar with the sort of zoning changes, but isn't there sort of like a downtown business district zoning?
I think in general, what we did was we thought, what is kind of the basics for commercial in the middle of town, centralized around the downtown district. We went all the way to the boat launch for the facade grant. You know, we went down to Marley's, which I would include, you know, all the way down to Marley's as part of the downtown. And then all the way up to the railroad tracks on the north side. So this is what we determined as our downtown for the facade grant. So we would kind of include this to be our downtown district for a housing thought. Yeah, you're gonna be up to that 300, 400, you know,
Yeah,
Yeah, for sure, if you're using that map.
which is fine, because I mean, like Dave said, you wouldn't want that dense.
Yeah,
Just
400 people just
north
downtown.
of Washington.
Well, thanks.
So when those other communities are using those metrics, I'm sure it's,
They gotta be
Wow.
going into some of the residential too, because I mean, if they're counting people across the street from that district right there, I'm gonna consider that downtown. You're walking across the street, number of all houses
Right.
mhm.
Yep.
on all the sides. So I
And on
mean,
the,
And they did,
on the
and they did
backside of
talk
the plaza
about
too.
you know, owner occupied housing in the report and what that percentage was as well.
When I report for our Connect community, 'cause we have to report on that in June, that's the map that I use for downtown district. So it'd be interesting to find out how many residential units were in that map.
you know, but every community's different, you
Mhm.
know, so I mean, they had to look at every community and come up with a map like that, what they
Mhm.
felt like their downtown
Right.
district. So I think if we kind of use that as our feeling, you know, what a downtown district is, I mean, we could use that map and kind of, you know, estimate, it'd take a little bit, but just estimate how many housing units are in there, and we could use that comparison real easy.
I think I might know somebody who could get you those actual numbers.
Here we go.
You know,
Pretty-
On
pretty-
your steps and your houses.
but
Pretty
overall,
easily.
I think Hans's point is that for us to continue encouraging housing in that district in different capacities, you know, downtown housing, a dense, you know, having more dense downtown housing is, you know, norm. I mean, a lot of communities do that. So, you know, encouraging more of multi-use, you know, structures where you got the retail on the first floor and, you know, residential up on the upper floors, you know, multiple upper floors, like you see in some other communities. I think that's something that we can definitely continue to do. And
Yeah,
that just
we-
supports traffic in the downtown district, you know, that goes hand in hand. So how do we get more housing in the downtown? How do we encourage more housing in the downtown? Well, we can, and that just goes right into our placemaking thing. We can make our downtown more attractive. We've done that with our North Water Street project. We're trying to go for the grants for the Pearl Street project. We have an opportunity if we want to move forward with, you know, encouraging more placemaking in the downtown and make it more attractive. You know, so that just draws people in, hand in hand. So.
That's a great segue. into where are we going. Um, we do have on the docket for this year, getting the placemaking landscape designs, figured out, because those are absolutely needed for us to move forward with any of the grant applications, and grant applications right now for placemaking are coming in hot and heavy. Lots of discussions from the state, lots of discussions from other granting organizations. We've talked about the hotel feasibility study, that being needed for two reasons. One, to determine if New London can support another hotel. And then secondly, to bring in prospective hotel investors. If we're going to bring in anybody who would invest in putting a hotel in New London, evidently they need that report done by the city. Another question that I've had, and I don't know the answer to this one, should we be looking at a convention center feasibility study as well? Because what venue options does New London offer? And what kind of venue options are there for the larger gatherings? We've got several options for smaller gatherings, and the new library is opening up another mid-sized venue gathering place for New London, but to have the large gatherings of 300 people or so, or even more, we're very limited. And would a convention center feasibility study be something we'd want to look at? And as you all have probably gathered in the few years that I've been on council, that I get really, really excited about all the opportunities. And I guarantee you, you want me excited about them, because if I'm not showing enthusiasm over at them, I don't care and I'm not getting involved. So I'm always excited, and I want all the dang things happening for New London. I really want everything to happen, and I want it to happen yesterday. But I'm also very practical. And I am the type of person that, while I want to see all the dang things, I also understand that these things take time and effort and resources and all those things. And it really takes some strategic planning for these things to unfold in a nice manner. So that's a challenge that I'm seeing New London facing right now. And I'm sure that Chad could speak to that a whole lot more, but we've talked about it in several committee meetings. And my question to that is, how can this committee support addressing those issues? And I did have a meeting with Chad, and I had a phone call with him, and I had a meeting with him, and we talked a little bit about it. And moving forward, I guess I would like to see this committee look at the possibility of spearheading this strategic planning study, something that would really focus in on a SWOT assessment and some SMART goals. And I guess that's where I want Chad to speak a little bit on how that would be a good opportunity for this committee to support getting all of that together and what that would look like.
So to be clear, I think we're moving on into item number 6. We're kind of merging right in the next discussion item about the direction and focus for New London. So Melinda asked me to put this on the agenda. I wanted to sit down with her and say, okay, where are we going to go with this? Just so we got some direction of this conversation and things. And we talked about a bunch of different options. You know, like Melinda said, we want all this stuff, but it takes time, it takes resources. And one of the concerns on staff side is just to make sure that we're not biting off more than we can chew with some of these things, because we have limited resources, we have limited staff. So you know, yes, we want New London to grow in a responsible capacity that we can handle, but how do we get there? we could say, hey, we want this restaurant, hey, we want this, manufacturing place, hey, we want this. But just to say we want it and having the ability to get it is two different things. So we kind of curved our conversation in a little bit how to make this all sustainable. And we talked about, a strategic plan. And I've talked about that in the past a little bit. I remember when I had my interview with the council for this position, that's one of the things that we talked about is strategic plan, just to make sure that we have a good direction. Make sure we're all on board with that direction, make sure that we're all on the same page with the direction with things. And a plan that's adopted by council. Now, does the Economic Development Committee, they're the ones that's kind of spearheading that? Because that is an umbrella for all the departments, Parks and Recreation, it's Public Works, it's police, it's everything. So this isn't just an economic development discussion. This is multi-committee and commission discussion as well. How are we going to be sustainable with staff? We've lost 100% of our workforce in the municipal garage, yet we're adding streets. We are talking about placemaking. We do want to encourage opportunities to draw in tourism for our downtown and utilize the riverfront. But do we have the resources if we keep on building these things? Can Ginger staff maintain that stuff? We don't want to be in a position that we're doing all these things, but we don't have the resources and we don't have the opportunities to maintain it. So maybe we talk about a strategic planning process to make sure that we're setting ourselves up for some of these things. This isn't a 1 month conversation. If we go that route, this is probably a 1 year or longer conversation. And to be honest, these are conversations you usually hire somebody to come in and facilitate the conversation of that capacity with things. So I don't know if that's kind of where you wanted me to lead with that, Belinda, but
Absolutely, yeah, because like you said, moving on to the discussion of the direction and focuses for New London. As a whole, the council, all the committees, we're looking at expanding, what more can we add to the industrial park? That requires infrastructure, that requires, revenue to come in to do the infrastructure down there. Same thing up by Aldi's, behind there, all those areas of growth. How do we manage all of that? There's a lot going on and it's exciting and I'm excited about it all. But how do we keep all of the plates spinning and make sure that everything is still moving forward? The analogy that I gave to Chad is, how do we make sure that we're skiing down this hill and not being followed by an avalanche or be overcome by an avalanche? We still want to traverse this ski hill and keep the momentum going, but we don't want to get overcome by an avalanche. So that was just my thought on it, was to get this strategic planning conversation started and going. And if this is the committee that could facilitate getting that contractor in, getting somebody in who's going to do that work, then I'm on board for that. But are we the right committee for that? So so that's where I wanted to go with that, is how do we keep the momentum going from a very strong emerging community into that growing community without losing, without having any cogs thrown into those wheels. So that was my thoughts on this report, and then reading this report, and it's like, how do we keep it going? And that's where this discussion went. So any other insights, any thoughts, comments on that? Yes.
I'm not necessarily opposed to it, but I feel like I don't have a very good frame of reference about what's already been done in the past. What kind of strategic plans have been put together, what kind of growth plans the city has. I don't have a very good handle on that at all. And I guess I wouldn't want to duplicate work if a lot of it's already been done before. Or contradict plans that were just put in place as a result of hard work and resources. So maybe before we would move forward, maybe we could just take a step back and look at what has already been done and what some of those recommendations were. And maybe we might find that we don't really need to go much further than that, or maybe we find that there's a need to look forward again.
I would agree with that. Do we know when the last strategic plan was done for the city?
I don't even know if the strategic plan was done. I would have to do some research. I don't,
Okay.
since my time, 18 years, we haven't done one.
Well,
Okay.
I guess I'm not necessarily saying just one for the city, but even a little bit more granular than that. Like, for example, what Ginger had a few months ago, right?
Mhm.
I mean, that's important, and we shouldn't just blow it off and say, well, we've got a bigger, better idea.
Mhm.
Because I mean, there was obviously a lot of work that was put into that, and so
And a strategic plan should incorporate and be in harmony with other plans like the court, Parks and Rec, outdoor comprehensive recreation plan. So, I mean, and I've seen studies and things done over the years for the downtown. There's been older studies, envisioning sessions for the downtown. Some elements I could see that have come to fruition. There's a lot of elements that haven't come to fruition, and changes have happened that probably won't lend those things to happen just because changes in the downtown have happened. But there's been plenty of individual studies on certain things. But as a comprehensive outdoor or a comprehensive strategic plan for the entire city, I don't think we've done one. I'm not aware of one that's on the books right now. And even if it has, it's probably so old, probably need to be updated anyway.
Wasn't it talked about one time about hotel feasibility study, like a
Yep.
year or so ago?
That's
And the same thing talked about having like a gathering hall, like, like Crystal Falls out there and stuff. That was brought up once before too. I don't know where that's gonna went to.
Maybe we put a perpetual, review for the next X meetings, that certain amount of time is dedicated, to that topic. And then Chad brings something next,
Mhm.
next month and says, okay, this is what I did find or didn't find, or,
Mhm.
we just
Yeah.
have an allocated amount.
And I think it would be nice too, if, not necessarily at the next meeting, but at some point in time, we see an example of what a strategic plan is
Oh, absolutely.
for a city. What so we all have a better grasp of what that would look like and how that would incorporate, the court plan, because a lot of the departments have their own, goals and plans. And that's kind of the thing, is that we've got all these moving parts. Some working in tandem, some feeling like they're in competition, because it all comes down to how much money does the city have to allocate? And how do we do that? And on top, in addition to how much money there is to allocate is the people resources. Do we have the people to do what needs to get done? And I think this last snowstorm was a really good example of, we have good people working really, really hard and dedicated, but that was a lot to ask for 5 men. That was a lot to ask. So, and they totally went above and beyond in service to this community. So
Did you say 5?
there were 5 people out there.
We have 5 full-time street operators, and then Robert, our public works
were down to
director. Well, we're actually down to 4 because one moved on, resigned and moved on to a different job. So, Robert was in a plow, our pool manager was in a piece of equipment. I mean, we were grabbing other people that normally don't do those things just to keep things going. So, but we have 5 full-time street operators on the books. We have 4 filled right now. We're trying to fill that last position. So, and then 3 full-time park caretakers, you know, we got parking lots, we've got city sidewalks, trails that we also take care of, not to get on that tangent, but.
Yeah.
But I think just to kind of bring it back a little bit, and I want to also make the point, if this was something we want to do, even that when Belinda and I were talking, this wasn't something probably for this year. This was something for future. The point of that was, okay, you know, Belinda was talking about what's our direction, what's our focus, where are we going for New London? And my point was, well, we got to come up, if that's something we want to have discussion on, how are we gonna plan for what the focus is? I mean, what strategy, what process are we going to use for that focus? So I just brought up the idea of a strategic plan that some other communities do and make it overall encompassing.
What is the
strategic plan.
difference between this phrase, strategic planning, and comprehensive planning?
Mhm.
Like I hear that phrase being used a lot, like cities or counties have comprehensive plans.
Correct.
Do we have that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, and how would
We-
that differ from a strategic plan?
We are required by state law to have a comprehensive plan. Every municipality in Wisconsin is required to have a comprehensive plan. And just several years ago, we went through the process, primarily the zoning or the plan commission went through that process to update our comprehensive plan. And it talks about just general future growth. It's a little bit, it's touching on this, but I think what Belinda was talking about is getting a little bit more granular with things. So the comprehensive plan is going to be very broad. It talks about different areas where to grow the community. So there's a future land use map saying that we intend residential to go here. We intend commercial to be in a downtown or commercial corridors. We intend our manufacturing to be in certain areas. So it's an overall plan to talk about future growth, but in a very general base. But then we have our zoning, which gets into the granular side of things of what actually is allowed in zoning different. So there's different layers to that. Whereas a strategic plan may come up with, and you could designate what your strategic plan is all about. I mean, it's not, strategic plans are all this. It's where do you want that strategic plan to help you guide you for the future. So I think getting to Bill's point, let's get some other communities, and I can probably find some other communities what their strategic plans have been, and then you can kind of see, you get a better idea. I think maybe that's a better route right now to see if that's
Yeah.
something we want to tackle. But I was just trying to come up with, you know, if we're gonna kind of focus on some things, how are we going to determine what we're gonna focus on? And there's obviously a planning process to do that.
I definitely like the downtown facade grant. It's cleaning up the community. We have a lot going on. The last week, you know, St. Patrick's Day was awesome. We had so many people having such a great time. A lot of people from out of town.
Mhm.
So the more we can beautify the town, I think that helps. You know, people come here for St. Patty's Day or kick off to summer or fall fest or whatever. So, I mean, I really like the direction of the placemaking we were kind of going towards at that one point.
Mhm.
Trying to clean up those areas of town that are a little bit an eyesore that we could clean up. So, but we would have to be somewhat in partnership with Park and Rec and Public Works and stuff like that as well. So as far as a focus, you know, the downtown facade, like I said, that's been cleaning up the downtown, which is awesome. But you know, maybe focusing on placemaking again and trying to clean up some of those, you know, unforeseen areas.
That is a perfect segue into our next action item, which is updates and follow-up on the downtown placemaking on Pearl Street, that project. And I'm gonna turn that over to Ginger to talk about
Yeah.
what she's learned.
So the last time I met with you folks, you directed me to get kind of a scope of what the design and engineering would look like for that project. I worked for I worked with Ayers and Designs and Associates. They are the ones that did the workshop with us. And they kind of walk you through, in this document, what exactly a schematic design or an initial design would look like. And that's kind of what we did at the workshop was kind of the first step. This is the next step in a 5-step process. So this isn't just getting engineering and design, but this is the first piece of that, which is really only about 25% of your design and what you're looking for in spatial organization, programming, costs, funding opportunities, just kind of what you're going to be working with. And the priority sites that we included was, of course, the Wolf River, the Pearl Street empty lots there next to Longevity, Banker Park, and St. John's Park. And just cleaning those up, making those look welcoming to visitors. So I guess the first part of this would kind of just look at what needs to be done. They would come in and do a kickoff meeting, kind of ask us what our goals and expectations are, go to the site, do the field documentations, do the base maps, the GIS data, identify any concerns or opportunities within that location, which could include the way the traffic circulates through there, the visibility of it, utilities and connections, talking with zoning and making sure that property ownerships are adequate for that area. Also reviewing the TID districts, and that goes into kind of the funding conversation of it, and kind of developing tools and strategies to pay for the project. And then, just continue to work with us in person with workshops and deliver goals in that area. Like I said, this is just an initial design phase. This would be enough to get us to be able to do some grants, and especially the Vibrant Spaces grants. They don't look for really detail. However, it's really important that you do something like this, because if you do not, you're going to have a less reliable cost estimate when you go into that next design development and construction documents. So you want to do something initial like this, a small 25% design, just so that when you go out and look for the rest of your work, it's accurate, because you're identifying any of those things where somebody would say, come to design costs and come to construction documents and come to the end project, and then they'll say, well, I didn't anticipate engineering that, and then next thing you know, your cost is so much higher. So for this next phase, the rough low end cost is around $25,000. If we did probably had them design the entire space, including Anchor, including St. John's, which I don't know if we need that. We just kind of need a how do I put it? More of just like a big picture of the area that we're looking at. But it could cost up to $100,000 for a project like this. There's a lot of little details, especially along that back lot, behind, AJ6's building. So you're going to look at floodplain issues and any waterways permits, things like that, if you're going to be working up against the water. So I guess if you looked over this scope, do you have any questions for me?
You get any of the money back if you end up with a grant?
Typically, this portion is not included in the grant, but Design, development, construction documents, those can be part of a grant eventually, but typically this is not.
And to piggyback on, Ginger's thoughts, I know some people I've talked to just thought, well, let's just put it on paper and figure it out and, let's start changing some things up. There are a lot of elements that are involved in this. I mean, the utility aspect of it, obviously, Ginger mentioned about, stormwater and, floodplain situations. Are we going to change traffic flows for right of ways? And we talked about the concept of, having, some of these alleys being utilized in the mornings for deliveries, but then in the afternoons maybe close them down to allow for more pedestrian access. So there is a lot of elements to talk about with this. And one of the most important things is public participation and public input. We've got several business owners that are down there, property owners out down there. We want them to have input. We want them to be part of the process and be invested. So having those communications with them is extremely important. The existing buildings and the existing businesses and any new businesses, if Kim's project comes to fruition throughout there, a lot of planning, a lot of figuring things out to make sure it's done right. So not all of a sudden, whoops, we didn't know this stormwater was here. Now we can't do the whole project because we can't dig this up anymore or can't move it. So
another thing that's really important with this is that they do identify those opportunities that we may not, just because we're in the mix of it, we're right down in the meat of it. We may not even, think of something that they look at as a big picture and say, you know what, have you considered, talking to this business member or, where, I don't know. I just think that having this 25% design, schematic design is really important to just identify every nook and cranny of the project possible to start. This phase takes around 4 to 6 months. So if anybody's thinking timeline.
Is there a timeline for the grants that you're considering?
We'd be past right now. I mean, this is definitely 2027. It's usually in the spring. So 2028 even. So.
And Peyton, our grant writer, knows that this is a project that we've got our eyes set on for possibility. So I mean, she's got this in the back of her head that as grants come up, she's like, oh, that could be an opportunity in the future.
Yeah. And we're actually applying right now for a Vibrant Spaces grant. That's a very small ask, so we'll kind of have the process down pat already. It's kind of like a trial and error. So and they are also aware that we are considering this project as well. So that's a good. Yes, John.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, within our budget, I think we should go ahead and commit the 25,000 to get this initial phase 25% done. And then knowing that the process will take, that long, we should probably start thinking about earmarking that second 25%, because from what I'm gathering, it's like $1,000 per 1%. So, but we should probably at least earmark 25,000 for this initial phase to get things going on the grant process, and just to get us to a point where we can make better decisions, knowing that we're most likely going to spend another 25,000 for the second 25%. Sure. And then we're going to know exactly where we're at. We're going to know what our assets, what our best options are, and we can spend that final money more wisely, I guess. I think, it doesn't pay to kick it down the road another month. I mean, I think that Ginger did the work, talked to the people at the convention, talk to people. We got Peyton on board yet. We're thankful to have people on board here, and I think we should commit the 25,000 and get this initial stuff done that needs to happen. That's my opinion.
So for anyone, with that, 25 to 25. Typically consultant fees fall between 6 to 10% range of the actual construction budget. So it all depends on how much we're gonna be, you know, how much that final number is gonna be. And we won't know that final number until about 50 to 75% design. And then just another thing that they wanted me to mention is that if there's a defined budget target, they can scale the scope to focus on the most important tasks, whether that be, in my mind, when I think that, you know, maybe we just look at the south side of the river projects, you know, because that's kind of where we need it the most. That's kind of the, as Tim was saying, the roughest spots that needed to be polished.
As opposed to the pocket park?
Correct, as opposed to Anchor and St. John's. The Pocket Park, if you're referring to that as the South Pearl Street ones, that would be included, I would
Okay.
think, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
But the opportunity is if we focus on, you know, the place over on the south side of the river, we can create, you know, a vision and elements, and then Ginger can just take those elements and, you know, like the Anchor Park, some of those things we might just be able to do in-house with staff. I mean,
Right.
whether it's mimicking the plan for lighting, mimicking the plan for signage, mimicking the plan for, you know, pedestrian seating and things like that. We could just take some of those elements on our own. We don't have to plan Anchor Park per se. We don't have to plan St. John's Park. We want to kind of include it in the overall. We want our downtown places to kind of match, you know, and be similar to the downtown district. Just gives that symmetry. But you know, maybe there's an opportunity. We just do a lot of the planning for the south side, and then we just create some of those elements and take some of those elements for the north side.
I would definitely go south side,
Mhm.
than worry about them two little ones over here.
So I think moving forward, I mean, this was the process, scope of services and things that came out of our conversation with AIRS. Number one, we don't have to go with AIRS. I mean, we could take this, create an RFP, you know, send it out to several consultants. I mean, AIRS has already started the process, so they kind of know what we're dealing with, but we can send this to several consultants and get information of what it would cost different consultants to do things, but we needed to have a scope that all these consultants are, you know, giving us information on apples to apples.
Are we required to get an RFP?
I was just
or-
gonna ask.
or Can we just go with I feel like there's, I mean,
We have a relationship with
Right.
what's going on.
Yeah.
They've been in and asked all the questions.
they're familiar with the community, what we want. I feel like we would just be wasting time unless we have to go for an RFP.
We are not required in this aspect. So engineering and things like that, you can choose who you want. If it's a construction project, then you get into the required bidding aspects of the state statute. But for engineering and consulting work, we can use whoever we want.
So even if you went with an RFP, you don't have to take the lowest bidder.
Correct.
I don't see a problem with going out to bid and see what other places would offer. I mean, I think that would be wise. I mean, we could still go with Aaron's, but I mean, it doesn't hurt to shop around.
The only
Not
thing with
looking to
that
do
is
it until
it would extend, you know, timelines because we'd have to go through that process, but it's totally.
And we're talking 2027, aren't we? Or are we talking this year still?
Well, we could actually do something this year because we have money in the, well, there is money in the Economic Development Fund if the committee and the council want to use that. We don't have to wait for the 2027 budget to proceed with some of this work. So we have an opportunity, we could start some of this work now.
Yeah, and we had talked about goals for this year, for this committee would be, obviously the billboards, which we've got done this year. The facade grant program, which we are in the midst of. Doing the placemaking, getting this, process started. Whether it be an RFP or just whatever it is, but moving it forward so that we can have something for applying for those grants. And then to Bob's question earlier, would the looking at a hotel feasibility study, bringing that to an actual agenda item and talking about that and moving that forward. Those were this year's goals. The strategic planning, let's talk about it, but that would be a next year or the year after goal. Figuring out what we're looking for in that strategic plan and getting that scope down. So, so yeah, this one is a this year. Let's get that this year. John's asking a question again.
Well, I was just gonna say that I do really think that we need to like move on this before the 2027 budget. Like Chad said, we have some monies earmarked in economic development. I agree with Tim, somewhat. At some point, we can go out to bids, but when you think about it, AIRS has probably already done about $5,000 to $8,000 work pro bono for us through the program. They seem to have a pulse on, like April said, they seem to have a pulse on our community. And I don't think going through with this initial 25%, 25 to 50% phase is gonna be a bad thing for us. I think that it'll be good to move this along and get us to a point where we can make better decisions. My opinion, I think we need to make a decision tonight and allocate some funds to proceed with this. Ginger's done the work that we've asked her to do. I think that we need to move forward with it. That's just my opinion.
Chad, do you have any updates on Kim's project?
Only that we kind of agreed that we're gonna kind of put it on hold until we can do these planning projects together. I would hate for us to do something and then she was gonna do something else. I think this has to be done in harmony with each other.
So if we say tonight,
Mhm.
AIRS move forward, where does that leave Kim?
I think that's just, she's involved in the planning process so that, as we design the public side of all of this, she's involved in that conversation. She's involved in that planning to make sure everything works out together, between the public and the private partnerships that are available down there. And not only Kim, but also, the other businesses down there. We've got State Farm, we've got Wolf River Pub, Swiderski. I want to make sure they're all, in the conversations and make sure that we're all communicating and being part of a successful project.
Chad, can you maybe speak on the Wolf River Pub lot, please?
Oh, so if you guys can recall, there are actually 3 lots, the grass lots in between Longevity Nutrition and Wolf River Pub. The city owns the 2 northern lots. The southern lot is owned by the owner of the Wolf River Pub parcel or the building. I've had some general conversations with him. He is interested in having conversations of selling. We haven't got anything beyond that, but he is interested in at least having those conversations to possibly acquire that other lots that we would have all the grass area in between the 2 buildings, hypothetically, for a placemaking project.
Going back to Kim.
Mhm.
Are you getting the feeling that there's a question mark around whether her project is gonna move forward at all? Because doesn't that potentially change the scope of our project?
I think if through this process, if it's determined that her project isn't going to be in harmony or line up with ours, then we change the scope for that parcel. We have conversations with Kim saying, hey, our intention, the developer's agreement that the city signed with her was for X. And if she can't do that, then we have it in as a clawback that she has to give us the parcel back, so we have control of that. So we do have that clawback in the developer's agreement that if it doesn't work out, we get it back. But I think giving her the opportunity to be part of this process, I think is a good thing, but if it doesn't work out, we still have that opportunity to make something of that whole area down there.
And those will be huge first steps, is just identifying those stakeholders and keeping them in the project with us.
Mhm.
So that'll be a huge initial piece of the project.
I know originally we were talking about a year, I think it was, or something like that, and then it got extended. Where are we at with that? When does she have to have something getting built?
She has already elapsed on that start date.
Right.
So at any time, we could call that and she would have to give us that property back. I've stated that it's probably a good thing that we do this project, this placemaking project, so at whatever's planning, I think it's a good thing to work together. But to Tim's point, at any time, she has lapsed on that start date, that we could call that property back.
I don't necessarily want to jam her, but at the same time, I don't want to spend money on putting a plan together or starting to put a plan together, which is then going to change.
Hypothetically, if when we're designing our phases and we envision a certain type of business there and it's not going to line up with what Kim can do, then we get the property back and then we can market that property to someone else who, I mean, there's communities that have properties and they market it. We want to see this here. Give us a developer who wants to be a partner with us with that, and we can move forward with that.
I think I mentioned to you, Milwaukee has a program where they keep it and they just lease that space out for beer gardens.
Mhm.
And there are private companies that come in and run the beer gardens,
Mhm.
but it's still owned by Milwaukee.
By the city.
I actually sat through an entire session on that project that they have with the city of Milwaukee, and it's a huge fundraiser for the Parks and Recreation Department. And that's kind of, when you speak of Kim's facility not being built, I envision then just a programmable space that we can move, you know, we can move things in and out of easily. It's a very flexible, open space, whether it's a food truck rally or it's a, you know, farmer's market that, okay, apparently now we're gonna be in the farmer's market business, you know? It's a programmable space.
Okay, getting back to what John had said, I do agree with him that we need to move forward. I think making a motion to dedicate $25,000 is a little premature.
I think what we would do is, if you like this process, we would ask heirs or go do the RFP route. If we go with heirs, we would ask them for agreement, and we would bring that agreement to the next meeting that spells out, you know, everything and the contract, dollar amount. Or, you know, we go the RFP route and we see where we go from there.
Next month's agenda, I think it'd be appropriate to have a conversation about pulling back on that contract with Kim that has lapsed and talk about possibly doing a city area that can be leased out as a huge fundraising for the Park and Rec. So I just think it's something we should have that conversation because it's been a while and we can't sit here and wait.
Back to the motion, I think we can.
Or back to someone making a motion
Yeah.
regarding how are we gonna move this, the scope forward?
So we would be asking for a proposal.
Either, the motion would be to either, have heirs put together a proposal or go out, have an RFP developed for the proposal, correct?
The heirs would be an agreement. that
An
you guys-
agreement.
That the committee and then the council will consider to execute for moving forward with this. Or B, do an RFP to get proposals. And then we would evaluate, pick one of those proposals, and then ask for an agreement and continue the process from there.
Is AIRS the same group that worked with us when we did they brought our community together and they did the technical assistance?
Yep. They're the workshop that we did with the Central Wisconsin Planning Commission, yep.
I would make a motion to receive a proposal from heirs to see what our next steps. There's no harm, there's no foul, there's no cost in that portion. It's we're gaining knowledge, every one of the, I mean, I know more now than what I did a half hour ago when we started talking about this, so. And maybe even maybe if they could do a proposal, but maybe somebody could talk to us about it.
You want a proposal or an agreement?
So we don't know what the dollar amount is, right?
What we would do is we would take this.
We would have to focus on-
Schematics and, if there are things we want to subtract out of here, get to a point where they're gonna look at this document and come up with a proposed dollar amount for that in an agreement form that this committee would evaluate and then recommend to
So the
council.
agreement before the proposal. Yes, that's what I'm asking.
Well, this is their proposal of their process, scope of services right here. Not including a, exact dollar amount yet, but this is their scope of services proposal for the most part. If we like this, they would give us a cost on this, and it would be an agreement form to bring back to this committee to consider.
I think we should go ahead and proceed with an agreement with them at this point. They've done this much work already. And I just got to say that there are other private capital firms besides Kim. I know that the property owner at 301 South Pearl across the street, there are other private capital people that would be willing to put money into their locations, knowing better what's going to happen there. And I think if we initiate a proposal or a plan, sign an agreement with like Ayers, who's done a bunch of stuff pro bono for us already. So we're kind of really getting a bang for our buck. I don't think we're going to save any money by going to another firm. They kind of know the lay of the land. We've been in discussions with them. I like the idea of going forward with an agreement to get this underway. We start talking proposals, we're another month or 2 months out. I just think that we need to move this forward, and so that the private equity owners, the private property owners around us can see we're doing something. They're going to have some kind of a plan versus waiting 6 months for it, and they're going to know we're moving forward with this really cool space. We don't know what it's going to look like yet, but we need to move, I think, now to
So-
get that ball rolling.
Yeah, that's, okay, let's pull it back. Bill was making a motion for an agreement to move forward with an agreement with Ayers to bring to the next meeting, if I'm hearing things correctly.
That was my intent. I may have said
Yeah,
wrong verbiage, but that's
Okay.
the intent.
so,
Are we just, with this motion, is it gonna be just the south properties too? Right, we're just looking at that, cause this right here has everything listed in there, it's got
Right.
Anchor Park and all them, we don't
I
worry
would
about that, we
refine
wanna,
this, yeah, I would refine it to do the south side if that's what you.
so that motion needs to be that the
okay, to enter okay, I'm confused now.
Enter into an
So you
agreement.
got a
Enter an
motion?
agreement, a motion to enter an agreement with Ayers
South.
for the south side in this proposal. Correct. Second.
That's okay.
Okay. Motion by Bill, second by April. Any further discussion?
Would you want me to maybe amend it to not exceed 25,000?
we're not spending any money right now. They're gonna
Okay.
send us what it's gonna cost.
Okay, because I
Then
know,
we-
I
then
know
we
John
go.
had initially said, let's.
That's a little premature.
Okay.
The money amounts are premature. Okay. So any other discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Abstentions? Okay, motion carries. Okay. That felt like a lot. Updates and reports, business updates, April.
So I have nothing to report this month. I got word that we have a few businesses who are signing leases, April 1st, and then another that will be signing a lease on May 1st. So more to come on some new businesses next month.
Excellent. City Administrator report, Chad.
Under my report, like I put in my packet today, actually, Austin and I were invited to speak at the Realtors Association of Northeast Wisconsin. They invited us in to talk about our recent zoning updates and then recent projects in New London. It was a really cool opportunity to talk to developers in our region, the Realtors Association. They really liked what they were seeing, that what we were doing with the zoning and encouraging growth. I will make the comment right off the bat. Some of the questions they asked, the first question was asked, how does your council feel or support growth in New London? Do they feel like it's, do you feel like it's a wall? Do you feel like there's support? And in general, I felt like, well, I mean, we have support for responsible growth in New London, and evidently they felt like that was the building block for a lot of things moving forward for growth in communities with developers. So evidently they're feeling a lot of, challenges with other communities because of diversity and things like that. And I felt like we were on pace. I mean, the council approved the zoning updates. A lot of the growth that we got going on is being in a positive capacity. So hopefully it was a good little promo for New London for several developers in the Northeast Wisconsin Realtors Association. So that was pretty cool. And then last week, I've been having more conversations with the local hotel group regarding plans for hotel feasibility study. That is our target to get that moving for this year. And then just want to report Swiderski, SC Swiderski is planning on a ribbon cutting event for the new downtown apartments on June 9th. That's all I have.
Thank you, Chad. Okay, potential agenda items for future meetings. We just heard hotel feasibility study will be there. We have Tim's suggestion to discuss the beer garden property. And then,
Is that, I mean, could we ask Kim to be here next month?
I can absolutely ask him to attend and kind of give an update and give you guys a better feel of what's going on.
I think that would be appropriate. Yep. And then we will be doubling back on this placemaking agreement. That's what we'll call it, the placemaking agreement. So, okay, and then future meetings, transportation updates, childcare updates, housing updates, reviewing our next meeting date. Would be the 28th. Thank you.
I have a conflict, so I'll just report on my business updates the following.
Okay. Anybody else have any issues with the 28th? Okay, hearing none. Then we will, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Dave, second by Bill. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned.